They thought she was just another trophy wife, pretty, silent, and easily manipulated. They were wrong. When Elise walked down the aisle to marry billionaire Alexander Sterling, the guests expected vows of love. Instead, they got a masterclass in revenge. With a microphone in one hand and a stack of incriminating photos in the other, Elise didn't just expose her cheating husband. She dismantled his entire family's dynasty live on camera. But the biggest shock wasn't the affair. It was the 3 words the groom whispered when the chaos erupted. "You won't believe how this ends." The invitation weighed 4 ounces. It was pressed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold leaf lettering that practically shouted, "Old money." The wedding of Alexander Sterling and Elise Ross. To the outside world, it was the merger of the decade. Alexander was the heir to the Sterling shipping empire, a man whose net worth hovered comfortably in the billions. Elise was the brilliant, albeit common, corporate attorney who had seemingly tamed the bachelor of New York City. But inside the walls of the Sterling estate in Newport, Rhode Island, the air wasn't filled with romance. It was filled with the metallic taste of silent warfare. Victoria Sterling, Alexander's mother, sat at the head of the mahogany dining table, her posture rigid enough to crack a walnut. She was a woman who didn't age. She simply hardened. "The floral arrangements are unacceptable, Elise," Victoria said, not looking up from her soup. "Lilies are for funerals. We agreed on orchids." Elise Ross cut into her steak with surgical precision. She knew they hadn't agreed on orchids. They had agreed on peonies. But Victoria had a habit of rewriting history to suit her mood. "I'll make the call tomorrow, Victoria. It's a minor adjustment." "Minor adjustments cost major reputations," Victoria snapped, her eyes finally locking onto Elise's. "But I suppose where you come from, reputation is a fluid concept." Across the table, Alexander scrolled through his phone. He was handsome in that devastating, careless way. Dark hair, slightly unkempt, a suit that cost more than Elise's first car. He didn't look up. He never did when his mother unsheathed her claws. "Mother, leave it," Alexander murmured, his thumb hovering over a stock ticker. "Elise knows what she's doing." "Does she?" Victoria took a sip of wine. "Because Isabella mentioned that the seating chart puts the senator next to the kitchen doors. A rookie mistake." The name landed like a grenade in the center of the centerpiece. Isabella. Isabella Vance, the family friend, the daughter of a diplomat, the woman Victoria had always intended for Alexander. She was blonde, leggy, and possessed a laugh that sounded like champagne bubbles popping. She was also the wedding planner. "Isabella is mistaken," Elise said, her voice steady. "The senator is at table 2, next to your brother. I checked the chart this morning." "Isabella is never mistaken," Victoria countered. Elise looked at Alexander, waiting for him to defend the woman he was marrying in 3 days. He just kept scrolling. Elise excused herself, her heels clicking against the marble floors of the hallway. She walked past the gallery of ancestors, stern men in oil paintings who looked down on her with the same disdain Victoria did. She needed air. She stepped out onto the terrace overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The waves crashed violently against the cliffs below, mirroring the turmoil in her gut. She wasn't naive. She knew marrying a Sterling meant marrying the scrutiny, the coldness, and the expectations. But lately, the coldness had turned into something else. Something conspiratorial. She pulled out her phone to call her sister, Tara, but stopped. A notification popped up from her security app. The cameras in the guest house, where she had set up her temporary office, had detected motion. Elise frowned. The guest house was locked. Alexander was inside. Victoria was at the table. The staff knew not to disturb her workspace. She opened the live feed. The footage was grainy in the low light, But the figure was unmistakable. It was Isabella Vance, and she wasn't arranging flowers. She was sitting at Elise's desk, frantically photographing documents from Elise's open laptop. Elise's heart hammered against her ribs. That laptop contained not just wedding spreadsheets, but confidential files regarding the prenuptial agreement, a document Elise had negotiated fiercely to protect her own assets, however small compared to the Sterlings. She didn't run down there. She didn't scream. Elise Ross was a lawyer. When she saw evidence, she didn't react. She compiled. She hit the record button on her phone screen and watched for 3 agonizing minutes as Isabella rifled through her life. Then, Isabella made a call. The audio from the camera was faint, but Elise pressed her phone to her ear, straining to hear over the sound of the ocean. "I have the trust fund addendums," Isabella whispered. "You were right, Victoria. She's trying to secure a loop in the vesting schedule. We can use this to void the clause if—" "Yes. I know. Saturday. Don't worry. By the time the cake is cut, she'll be humiliated enough to annul it herself. And then— Yes, my love. I'll see you tonight." Elise lowered the phone. Her hands were trembling, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it burned. "My love." Isabella wasn't talking to Victoria at the end. She was talking to a man. Elise looked back through the French doors. Alexander was still at the table, pouring himself another drink. He hadn't moved. So who was Isabella meeting? Elise realized then that the wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a trap, and she had 3 days to turn it into a weapon. The next morning, the Sterling estate was a hive of activity. Florists were constructing arches of white roses, not lilies, not orchids, and caterers were shouting in French. Elise moved through the chaos like a ghost. She needed proof. The video of Isabella was damaging, but it was circumstantial regarding the affair. My love could be anyone, but Elise knew in her gut who it was. She drove her rental Porsche into town, parking 2 blocks away from a nondescript coffee shop. She sat in the back corner and waited. 10 minutes later, a man in a trench coat slid into the booth opposite her. "You look like you're dressing for a noir film." "Breathless," Elise said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "I assume you have something for me." Detective Reynolds was the best private investigator in New England. He was expensive, discreet, and had a grudge against the elite that made him thorough. "You were right to be suspicious," Reynolds said, opening a tablet. "I've been tracking Isabella Vance for 2 weeks, but the trail didn't lead where I expected." He turned the screen toward her. "I thought she was sleeping with Alexander. Standard cliché. Billionaire keeps the mistress close." Elise held her breath. And I haven't seen them alone together once," Reynolds said. "Alexander spends his nights at the office or at the club playing poker with the boys. He's boring, frankly." Elise blinked. Then who was she talking to? Reynolds swiped the screen. A grainy photo appeared. It was taken through the window of a high-end bistro in Boston. Isabella was leaning across the table, holding hands with a man. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and a familiar jawline. Elise gasped. "That's Marvin Sterling," Reynolds nodded. "Alexander's father, your future father-in-law." The world tilted on its axis. Marvin Sterling was the patriarch, the man who supposedly handed over the reins to Alexander years ago due to health reasons, though he remained the chairman of the board. He was married to Victoria. "It gets worse," Reynolds said. He tapped a file named Financials. "I did a deep dive into the wedding budget. You know how Victoria insisted on handling the vendor payments to alleviate your stress?" "Yes. She's been funneling money, huge sums. The floral budget is listed at $200,000. The actual invoice from the florist is $40,000. The catering, the venue, the band, it's all inflated by 400%. Where is the difference going? Elise asked, her lawyer brain kicking into overdrive. Into a shell company in the Caymans, Reynolds said. Registered to an LLC. The signatories, Isabella Vance and Alexander Sterling. Elise felt the blood drain from her face. Alexander is in on it. It's his signature, Reynolds shrugged. Digital but valid. It looks like the Sterling family is using your wedding to launder about $3 million out of the family trust, bypassing tax laws and dumping it into an account Alexander and Isabella control. And since you signed the prenup stating you take no liability for family business debts. They're setting me up, Elise whispered. If the IRS catches this, or the shareholders, the paper trail will show I organized the wedding. I signed the vendor contracts. Victoria just handled the payments. I'm the fall guy. I go to prison for embezzlement. Alexander gets an annulment, keeps his money, and marries Isabella. It was brilliant. It was evil. It was the Sterling way. Alexander isn't cheating on you with his body, Elise, Reynolds said softly. He's cheating on you with his signature. He's letting his father sleep with the mistress, letting his mother abuse you, and using your name to wash dirty money. He's not a husband. He's a co-conspirator. Elise stared at the photos. The image of Marvin and Isabella, the bank statements, the video of Isabella in her office. She thought of Alexander's indifference at dinner. It wasn't indifference. It was the calm of a man who knew the lamb was already in the slaughterhouse. Can you get me high-resolution copies of all of this? Elise asked, her voice returning, harder than before. And the audio? I need clear audio. I can get you anything, Reynolds said. What are you going to do? Call the wedding off? Elise stood up, smoothing the front of her white blazer. She picked up her sunglasses. Call it off? She smiled, and it was a terrifying thing to witness. Detective, the invitations have been sent. The guests are arriving. The cake is ordered. It would be rude to cancel now. She put her sunglasses on. I'm going to give them the show they paid for. Thursday night was the welcome party for the out-of-town guests. It was held on the Sterling's private yacht, the Leviathan. Elise wore a dress of crimson silk that clung to her curves like a second skin. It was a bold choice for a bride. Red was usually reserved for the scandalous. But Elise felt scandalous tonight. She boarded the yacht, Alexander on her arm. He squeezed her hand for the cameras, flashing that $1 million smile. You look tense, Alexander whispered, as they waved to a photographer from Vogue. Relax, darling. It's almost over. Yes, Elise replied, beaming at the camera. It certainly is. She circulated the room, playing the part of the doting bride. She hugged cousins she didn't know and accepted compliments from socialites who would stab her in the back for a discount on a handbag. She found Victoria holding court near the bar, sipping a martini. Isabella was next to her, looking radiant in gold. Marvin was there too, his hand resting casually, too casually, on the small of Isabella's back. Elise, Victoria said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. We were just discussing the ceremony. Isabella suggests you don't write your own vows. Stick to the traditional ones. It's safer. Less risk of embarrassing yourself. Actually, Elise said, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, I've been working on them all afternoon. I think you'll find them very illuminating. Isabella giggled. Oh, Elise, you're so brave. I'd be terrified to speak from the heart in front of all these important people. Courage is easy when you have nothing to hide, Elise said, looking Isabella dead in the eye. Isabella's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Marvin," Elise turned to the patriarch, "I was hoping we could have a dance. Father-daughter bonding?" Marvin looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course." As they moved to the dance floor, Elise kept her distance. He smelled of expensive cologne and deceit. "You've raised an incredible son, Marvin," Elise said, as they swayed to the jazz band. "He's very obedient." Marvin chuckled. "Alexander knows his duty. The Sterlings always put family first." "Family is so important," Elise agreed. "It's fascinating how the definition of family can extend. Goddaughters, for instance. You and Isabella seem very close." Marvin missed a step. It was subtle, a slight stumble, but Elise felt it. His grip on her hand tightened. "Isabella grew up in this house," Marvin said, his voice dropping an octave. "She is like a daughter to me." "Of course," Elise smiled. "Though usually, fathers don't buy their daughters condos in the Cayman Islands. Or is that a new tradition?" Marvin stopped dancing. The music swelled around them, masking the tension from the onlookers. He looked down at her, his eyes cold and shark-like. "You should be careful, Elise," he hissed. "You're marrying into a world you don't understand. Curiosity is a dangerous trait for a Sterling wife." "I'm not a Sterling wife yet, Marvin," she whispered back, "and I'm a very quick learner." She pulled away before he could respond and walked back to Alexander. She needed to plant one more seed. "Your father seems upset," Elise said to Alexander, taking his arm. "He's just stressed," Alexander said, dismissing it. "Listen, Elise, about the honeymoon, I was thinking we delay it a few weeks. I have some business in Zurich that can't wait." Zurich, the banking capital. "Whatever you say, darling," Elise said. "I'm sure you have a lot of assets to move around." She leaned in and kissed his cheek. "I'm going to turn in early. I need my beauty sleep. Tomorrow is the rehearsal dinner, and I have a surprise presentation for everyone." "A presentation?" Alexander frowned. "Elise, no slideshows. It's tacky." "Oh, it won't be a slideshow, Alexander," she said, walking away. "It's going to be a movie." As she walked back down the gangway, she pulled out her phone. She had a text from Detective Reynolds. Message: "I found the second account. It's not just money laundering. It's blackmail. Marvin is paying Isabella to keep quiet about something else. Something that happened 5 years ago. I'm sending the police report now." Elise opened the file as she sat in the back of the town car. She read the report. Her hand flew to her mouth. It wasn't just financial fraud. It was a hit and run. A young girl, paralyzed. The car was a Sterling Bentley. The driver listed on the police report was unknown, but the hush money payments from Marvin to Isabella started 2 days after the accident. Isabella wasn't just the mistress. She was the witness. Or maybe she was the driver, and Marvin covered it up? No. Elise looked at the dates. The car was registered to Alexander. Alexander had hit the girl. Marvin had paid off the police chief. Isabella had been in the passenger seat, and she had been blackmailing the family ever since, using it to worm her way into their bed and their bank accounts. And now they were going to pin the financial cleanup on Elise to pay off the final installment of Isabella's silence. Elise looked out the window at the dark ocean. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Not for herself, but for the girl whose life they ruined. "Okay," she whispered to the empty car. "No mercy." The rehearsal dinner was held in the conservatory, a glass-walled structure filled with the orchids Victoria had demanded. The guest list was smaller tonight, only 50 of the closest family and friends, plus the bridal party. The atmosphere was stiflingly elegant. Elise wore white again, a pantsuit this time, sharp and modern. It stood in stark contrast to the flowy, pastel gowns of the bridesmaids. She sat next to Alexander, who was checking his watch every 5 minutes. "Relax," she murmured, placing a hand on his. "Isabella will be here soon." He flinched. "I'm not waiting for Isabella. I'm waiting for the market to open in Tokyo." Always the businessman, Elise smiled tight. Isabella arrived 10 minutes late, breathless and flushed. She took her seat across from them, next to Marvin. Victoria sat at the head of the table, surveying her kingdom with critical eyes. "The soup is lukewarm," Victoria announced to the room at large. "Incompetence is a disease in this country." Elise stood up, tapping a spoon against her champagne flute. The crystal rang out, silencing the murmur of conversation. "If I could have everyone's attention," Elise said, her voice projecting clearly. "I know traditionally the groom's father speaks first, but I have a small gift for the family that I just couldn't wait to share." Alexander tugged on her jacket. "Elise, sit down. What are you doing?" "It's a gratitude gift, Alex." She patted his hand. "Don't ruin the surprise." She signaled to the waiter, who dimmed the lights. A large projection screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy," Elise began, walking slowly around the table. "The Sterling legacy is built on strength, discretion, and complex partnerships. I wanted to honor that." On the screen, a photo appeared. It was a beautiful, vintage black and white picture of the Sterling shipping headquarters from the 1950s. "The Sterlings built an empire," Elise narrated. The slide changed to a picture of Marvin Sterling receiving a Businessman of the Year award. Led by Marvin, a pillar of the community. "Here, here!" a cousin toasted from the back. "And now, Alexander," Elise gestured to him. A photo of Alexander on a yacht appeared. He looked handsome and carefree. "The prodigal son." The screen flickered. The music changed from classical to a slightly ominous, low-tempo beat. "But every empire has its support system," Elise said. "The people behind the scenes, the ones who handle the messy details." A new photo appeared. It wasn't a PR shot. It was a grainy, zoomed-in photo of a document. A bank transfer. Amount $500,000 from Sterling Family Trust to IV Consulting, Cayman Islands. The room went deadly silent. Isabella dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the china. "Elise!" Alexander stood up, his face darkening. "What is this? Turn it off." "Sit down, Alexander," Elise said, her voice whipping like a lash. "I'm thanking our wedding planner." She clicked the remote. Another document appeared. Invoice, wedding flowers, actual cost, $40,000 billed, cost $200,000. "You see?" Elise said, addressing the confused guests. "Isabella has been working so hard. She's been managing not just the flowers, but the finances. She's found a way to turn a wedding into a profit margin. It's brilliant, really. Why spend money when you can steal it from your own company?" "Turn it off," Victoria shrieked, standing up. "This is preposterous. She's drunk." "I'm stone cold sober, Victoria," Elise said. "But are you?" "Because you signed the approval for these funds." She clicked the remote again. A video started playing. It was the footage from the guest house, Isabella rifling through Elise's laptop, talking on the phone. "She's trying to secure a loop. We can use this to void the clause. By the time the cake is cut, she'll be humiliated enough to annul it herself." The guests gasped. Alexander looked from the screen to Isabella, his face draining of color. But he didn't look shocked by the theft. He looked terrified of something else. "Isabella," Elise said, turning to the woman who was now shaking in her seat. "You were looking for the prenup addendums. You were worried I'd find out about the debt, about the money you and Alexander have been siphoning off for years." "That's a lie!" Isabella screamed, standing up. "She's lying! Marvin, tell them!" Elise laughed. "Oh, Marvin, I almost forgot about you." She clicked the remote one more time. The screen filled with the photo of Marvin and Isabella holding hands in the bistro. It was intimate, undeniable. The look in Marvin's eyes was not fatherly. The silence in the room was heavy enough to crush bones. Victoria slowly turned her head to look at her husband. "Marvin," she whispered. "It's out of context," Marvin sputtered, his face turning a blotchy red. She was upset. I was comforting her." "Comforting her?" Elise asked. "Is that what you call it?" "Because according to the text messages I have..." She held up a thick stack of printed papers she had pulled from her bag. "The comfort involves a lot of hotel rooms in Boston and a shared apartment in the city that the company pays for." She threw the stack of papers onto the center of the table. They fanned out, revealing timestamps, explicit messages, and travel itineraries. "You're sleeping with your son's mistress," Elise stated, her voice devoid of emotion. "Or is she your mistress that you loaned to your son to help him launder money?" It's hard to keep track of the hierarchy. Alexander looked at his father, genuine shock finally registering. "Dad, you and Isabella, you didn't know?" Elise looked at Alexander with mock pity. "Oh, Alex, you really are just the pawn, aren't you? You thought she was helping you steal money. You didn't know she was sleeping with the boss to ensure she got the biggest cut." Isabella was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. "He made me. Alexander, tell them. The accident." "Shut up!" Marvin roared, slamming his fist on the table. "Not another word." Elise smiled. "Ah, the accident." She clicked the remote off. The screen went black. "We'll save that story for tomorrow," Elise said. "I wouldn't want to spoil the main event." She picked up her glass of champagne. "Enjoy the soup, everyone. I hear it's lukewarm." She turned and walked out of the conservatory. Behind her, the room exploded into chaos. She heard Victoria screaming, glass breaking, and the wail of a family tearing itself apart. Elise walked straight to her car. She didn't go back to the guest house. She drove to a hotel in town where Detective Reynolds was waiting with the final piece of the puzzle. "Did you do it?" Reynolds asked as she entered the room. "I lit the fuse," Elise said, kicking off her heels. "Tomorrow the bomb goes off." "You know they'll come for you tonight," Reynolds warned. "They'll try to intimidate you, buy you off, or worse." "Let them try," Elise said. "I have the live stream set up for the ceremony. The link is already scheduled on every social media platform. The Sterling wedding. Live." "You're going to broadcast it?" "If I just tell the police, they'll use their lawyers to bury it," Elise said. "If I tell the world, there's nowhere to hide." The morning of the wedding was grey and overcast. A storm was brewing off the coast, turning the ocean into a churning mass of steel-grey water. Elise expected the wedding to be cancelled. She expected a cease and desist order. She expected the police. Instead, she got a text from Alexander at 7 a.m. Message: "The wedding is still on. Be at the altar. If you don't show up, I release the photos of your sister." Elise froze. Her sister, Tara. Tara, who had a checkered past, a minor drug conviction from college that she had worked hard to expunge so she could adopt her daughter. Elise dialed Alexander immediately. "You wouldn't." "I would." Alexander's voice was calm, terrifyingly so. "You embarrassed us last night. My mother is sedated. My father is in damage control. But the Sterlings do not cancel weddings. It looks weak. We are going to go through with this. You are going to smile, say, 'I do.' And then we are going to ship you off to a nice, quiet sanatorium in Switzerland where you can rest your troubled mind. We'll say you had a breakdown." "You're insane," Elise hissed. "I'm pragmatic. You have a choice, Elise. Walk down the aisle, or Tara loses her daughter. The adoption agency has very strict morality clauses." The line went dead. Elise stared at the phone. They were holding her sister hostage to save face. They thought they had checkmated her. She looked at the mirror. Her face was pale, but her eyes were burning. "Reynolds," she called out to the other room. "Change of plan. We're not just exposing the affair and the money." Reynolds appeared in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. "What are we doing?" "We're playing the recording," Elise said. "The one from the police archives, the 911 call from the night of the accident." Reynolds hesitated. "That's heavy, Elise. That destroys Alexander completely. He'll go to prison for vehicular manslaughter." "He just threatened my sister," Elise said, picking up her veil. "He doesn't get prison. He gets destroyed." She arrived at the estate at 10 South a.m. The atmosphere was funereal. The staff avoided eye contact. The guests who had attended the rehearsal dinner were whispering in corners, looking at Elise with a mixture of fear and awe. Victoria was in the bridal suite, looking like a corpse that had been reanimated by sheer will. She stood up as Elise entered. "You will fix this," Victoria hissed. "You will smile. You will be the blushing bride. And when this is over, you will disappear." "I love the dress, Victoria," Elise said, ignoring her. She ran her hand over the $50,000 Vera Wang gown. "It's perfect for a finale." Isabella was nowhere to be seen. Marvin was presumably hiding until the ceremony. The ceremony was to be held on the cliffside lawn. Hundreds of guests, senators, CEOs, celebrities, filled the white chairs. They didn't know about the night before. They only saw the grandeur. The music started. Canon in D. Elise walked out of the house. Her father had passed away years ago, so she walked alone. It was fitting. She saw Alexander standing at the altar. He looked impeccable. He watched her approach with a smug, predatory smile. He thought he had won. He thought fear had silenced her. He didn't know that the diamond pendant around her neck contained a tiny, high-powered microphone connected to the PA system. He didn't know that Reynolds was in the sound booth, having bribed the audio technician with $5,000. He didn't know that the live stream cameras were positioned not just on the couple, but on the crowd, ready to capture the fallout. Elise reached the altar. Alexander took her hand. His grip was painful. "Smart girl," he whispered. "Do this right, and Tara stays safe." The officiant, a bishop who played golf with Marvin, began the service. "We are gathered here today." Elise let him get through the opening prayer. She let him get through the reading about love being patient and kind. Then the bishop asked, "If anyone can show just cause why this man and this woman should not be lawfully joined together, let them speak now or forever, hold their peace." Usually, this is a formality, a moment of silence. Elise pulled her hand away from Alexander. She reached up and tapped the pendant on her neck. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the massive speakers, startling the birds. "I have a cause," Elise said. Her voice boomed across the lawn, crystal clear. Alexander's eyes widened. "Elise, don't!" "My groom," Elise turned to the crowd, "is currently blackmailing me. He threatened to ruin my sister's life if I didn't marry him today to cover up his family's crimes." A gasp rippled through the crowd like a wave. "Cut the mic!" Marvin shouted from the front row, standing up. "You can't cut it," Elise shouted back. "It's broadcasting live to YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. There are currently—" She glanced at the phone hidden in her bouquet. 50,000 people watching. Say hello to the world, Alexander. Alexander lunged for her, but Elise stepped back. Two large men in suits, Reynolds' security team, stepped out from behind the flower arrangements, blocking Alexander. "Last night, I showed some of you the theft," Elise said, addressing the cameras now. "But that was just money. Money can be repaid. Lives cannot." She nodded to the sound booth. "Play it." The speakers crackled. Then a voice filled the air. A younger Alexander, panicked, slurring his words. "Dad? Dad, pick up. I hit something. I think it's a person. Oh God, there's blood everywhere. I was driving the Bentley. I'm drunk, Dad. You have to help me. I can't go to jail." The crowd was frozen in horror. Then, a second voice on the recording. "Marvin, stay where you are. Do not call 911. I'm sending Isabella to get you. She'll take the car. We'll say it was stolen. Don't say a word to anyone." The recording ended. Alexander looked like he was going to vomit. Marvin sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Victoria stared straight ahead, catatonic. "That was 5 years ago," Elise said, her voice shaking slightly now. "The victim was Maya Lopez. She was 18. She's in a wheelchair today because Alexander Sterling was too drunk to drive and too cowardly to face the consequences." Elise ripped the veil off her head and threw it onto the ground. "I am not marrying Alexander Sterling. I am witnessing against him." Police sirens began to wail in the distance. Reynolds had timed the call perfectly. "And as for the rest of you," Elise looked at the stunned guests, the enablers, the elite. "You all knew something was wrong in this family. You looked away because the parties were good and the donations were big. You're all complicit." She turned to Alexander one last time. "You wanted a trophy wife, Alex? You got a prosecutor." As the police cars screeched up the long driveway, lights flashing, the crowd finally broke. People were running, photographers were snapping pictures like madmen, and the Sterling dynasty was crumbling in real time. But then, Alexander did something unexpected. He didn't run, he didn't cry. He looked at Elise with a strange, twisted expression. He leaned in close, ignoring the security guards, and whispered 3 words. "You missed one." Elise frowned. "What? You missed one?" He smiled, a chilling, broken smile. "Look at the boat." Elise turned to look at the ocean. The Sterling yacht, the Leviathan, was anchored offshore. As she watched, a massive explosion ripped through the hull of the ship. A fireball mushroomed into the grey sky. The crowd screamed. "The evidence," Alexander whispered. "The servers, the hard drives. They were all on the boat. You have the audio, Elise, but you don't have the paper trail anymore. It's at the bottom of the Atlantic." The police were running onto the lawn now, handcuffs out. Elise watched the ship burn. He had destroyed the financial evidence. He was willing to blow up a $50 million yacht to save his money. But he had forgotten one thing. "I don't need the hard drives, Alex," she said, as the officers grabbed him. She held up her phone. "I synced the cloud." The days following the Red Wedding of Newport, as the press dubbed it, were a blur of flashbulbs, subpoenas, and silence. While the video of the explosion and Elise's revelation had garnered 40 million views in 48 hours, the legal reality was far grimier than the internet comment section suggested. The Sterlings were not just a family. They were an institution, and institutions do not collapse easily. Within hours of his arrest, Alexander was out on a $10 million bail. Marvin was under house arrest, citing a heart condition. Victoria, untouched by the immediate criminal charges, but devastated by the social humiliation, had launched a PR campaign that would make Machiavelli blush. Elise sat in a safe house provided by the district attorney's office, a drab apartment in Boston that smelled of bleach and stale coffee. Detective Reynolds paced the floor. "They're spinning it," Reynolds said, tossing a tabloid onto the table. "Look at this. Disgruntled bride fakes audio? Experts weigh in. They've hired a team of forensic audio specialists to claim the 911 call was AI-generated." Elise picked up the paper. Victoria was quoted. "Elise is a troubled woman with a history of mental instability. She was after the money, and when she realized the prenuptial agreement was ironclad, she decided to burn the house down on her way out." "It's smart," Elise admitted, rubbing her temples. "Discredit the source. If they can convince a jury the audio is fake, and since the physical evidence on the yacht is destroyed, they walk." "But you synced the cloud," Reynolds said. "You have the financial records." "I have copies," Elise corrected. "Digital copies. Without the original servers, their lawyers are arguing that I fabricated the files. They're saying I hacked the system and planted false data to frame them." It was the Billionaire's defense: deny, delay, destroy credibility. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Harper Lee, entered the room. She looked exhausted. "It's not good, Elise," Harper said, dropping a file on the table. "The judge is throwing out the wiretap from the guest house. He ruled that you didn't have consent to record Isabella in a private dwelling, even though it was your office. That video is inadmissible." "So we're losing?" Elise asked, her voice steady. "We have the 911 call," Harper said. "But the defense is bringing in 3 experts to testify it's a deepfake. If we don't have a witness to corroborate the call, Alexander walks on the manslaughter charge. And if he walks on that, the financial charges might not stick either." Elise walked to the window. The blinds were drawn. She felt trapped. She had played her hand, exposed them to the world, and yet the sterling money was building a wall around them she couldn't climb. "We need a witness," Elise whispered. "We don't have one," Reynolds said. "Marvin is staying silent. Alexander is arrogant. The staff are paid off." "Isabella," Elise said. "Isabella Vance is in the wind," Reynolds sighed. She disappeared the moment the police sirens started wailing. She wasn't at the wedding. She wasn't at her apartment. She's gone. "She's not gone," Elise said, turning around. "She's waiting for a payout." Elise knew Isabella. She was greedy, yes, but she was also a survivor. She wouldn't run without a safety net. "Get me a burner phone," Elise told Reynolds. "I know where she is." 2 hours later, Elise dialed a number she had memorized from the stolen financial records. It wasn't a phone number, it was the contact for the concierge service at a private villa in St. Bart's that the Sterlings used for off-book vacations. "Bonjour, Villa Azure," a voice answered. "Put me through to Mrs. Vance," Elise said, using her best Victoria Sterling impression: imperious, cold, demanding. "It is urgent." The concierge didn't hesitate. "One moment, Madame Sterling." A click, then a shaky breath. "Hello?" "Hello, Isabella," Elise said, her own voice returning. Silence. Then, "Elise, are you recording this?" "It doesn't matter if I am," Elise said. "What matters is what Victoria is doing right now." "Victoria?" "She's holding a press conference in an hour," Elise lied. She didn't know if there was a press conference, but she knew Victoria's playbook. "She's going to announce that the embezzlement was entirely your idea, that you seduced Alexander and Marvin to gain access to the accounts. She's pinning the hit and run on you, too. She's going to say you were driving the Bentley." "That's insane," Isabella's voice cracked. "I wasn't even in the car. I picked Alexander up." "Can you prove it?" Elise asked. "The car is gone. The yacht is gone. The only people who know the truth are Sterlings, and they protect their own. You're the outsider, Isabella. You're the mistress. You're the perfect scapegoat." Elise let the silence stretch. She could hear Isabella breathing hard. "They promised me," Isabella whimpered. "Marvin promised me 5 million and a new identity in Brazil." "Marvin is under house arrest," Elise said ruthlessly. "He can't transfer a dime without the feds seeing it. You're broke, you're a fugitive, and you're about to be charged with vehicular manslaughter and grand larceny. You'll die in prison, Isabella." "What do you want?" Isabella hissed. "I want you to come home," Elise said. "I want you to walk into the DA's office and tell them everything. If you turn state's witness, we can get you immunity for the accident and a reduced sentence for the fraud." "Why should I trust you? You ruined my life." "I exposed your life," Elise corrected. "The Sterlings are the ones ruining it." "Check the news, Isabella. Check the statements Victoria's lawyer released this morning." Elise hung up. She prayed Reynolds could move fast enough. "She's in St. Bart's," Elise told the detective. "Villa Azure. If you hurry, you can get the extradition started before she runs again." Reynolds grabbed his coat. "You better hope she doesn't check the news, Elise. Victoria's lawyer hasn't released a statement today." Elise smiled. "She won't check. Panic makes people blind." The weeks following the Red Wedding of Newport were not the victory lap the internet expected. While the video of the yacht explosion garnered 40 million views in 48 hours, the legal reality was far grimmer than the comment section suggested. The Sterlings were not just a family, they were an institution, and institutions do not collapse without a fight. Within hours of his arrest, Alexander was out on a $10 million bail. Marvin was under house arrest in their Manhattan penthouse, citing a severe heart condition. Victoria, untouched by criminal charges but devastated by social humiliation, had launched a PR campaign that would make Machiavelli blush. She hired a legion of spin doctors to paint Elise not as a whistleblower, but as a mentally unstable gold digger who had fabricated the evidence to extort a settlement. Elise sat in a safe house provided by the district attorney's office, a drab beige apartment in Boston that smelled of bleach and stale coffee. Detective Reynolds paced the floor, tossing a tabloid onto the table. "They're winning the narrative," Reynolds said, his voice tight. "Look at this headline. Deepfake drama, experts question Sterling audio." They've hired a team of forensic audio specialists to testify that the 911 call was AI-generated. And since Alexander blew up the yacht, we don't have the original physical servers to prove the timestamps. Elise picked up the paper. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. "So, without the physical hard drives, they claim my cloud backup is a forgery?" "Exactly," the district attorney, Harper Lee, said as she entered the room. She looked exhausted. "The judge is wavering. If we don't have a witness to corroborate the call or the financial fraud, Alexander walks on the manslaughter charge. And if he walks on that, the financial charges might not stick either. We need Isabella." "Isabella Vance is a ghost," Reynolds sighed. "She disappeared before the first police car reached the wedding venue." "She's gone." "She's not gone," Elise said, standing up and walking to the window. "She's waiting for a payout. She's a survivor, not a mastermind, and right now she's terrified." Elise turned back to them. "Give me a burner phone. I know how to flush her out." 2 hours later, Elise dialed a number she had memorized from the stolen financial records. Not a cell phone, but the direct line to the concierge of a private villa in St. Bart's that the Sterlings used for off-book transactions. "Bonjour, Villa Azure," a voice answered. "Put me through to Mrs. Vance," Elise said, channeling Victoria Sterling's imperious, icy tone. "It is urgent." The concierge didn't hesitate. A moment later, a shaky breath came over the line. "Hello?" "Hello, Isabella," Elise said, dropping the accent. Silence stretched on the line, heavy and fearful. "Elise, how did you—" Are you recording this? It doesn't matter if I am, Elise said. What matters is what Victoria is doing right now. Have you seen the news in the last hour? I haven't looked. You should, Elise lied smoothly. Victoria is holding a press conference. She's announcing that the embezzlement was entirely your idea. She claims you seduced Alexander and Marvin to gain access to the accounts. But the worst part? She's pinning the hit and run on you. She's providing a statement that you were driving the Bentley that night. That's insane, Isabella screamed, her voice cracking. I wasn't even in the car. I picked Alexander up. Marvin made me do it. Can you prove it? Elise asked ruthlessly. The car is crushed. The yacht is at the bottom of the Atlantic. The only people who know the truth are Sterlings, and they protect their own. You're the outsider, Isabella. You're the mistress. You're the perfect scapegoat. Elise let the silence do the work. She knew Isabella's greed was only outweighed by her self-preservation. They promised me $5 million and a new identity in Brazil, Isabella whimpered. Marvin is under house arrest, Elise countered. He can't transfer a dime without the feds seeing it. You're broke, you're a fugitive, and you're about to be charged with vehicular manslaughter. You will die in prison, Isabella, unless you come home. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only one offering you a life raft, turn state's witness, immunity for the accident, reduced sentence for the fraud, or stay in St. Bart's and wait for Interpol. 6 months later, the trial of the People versus Alexander Sterling began. It was the most watched legal event of the decade. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with the scent of expensive suits and desperation. The defense had been brutal, painting Elise as a scorned woman. But on the third day, the prosecution played their ace. The doors opened, and Isabella Vance walked in. She wasn't wearing designer silk. She wore a grey prison jumpsuit and handcuffs. Isabella's testimony lasted 3 days. She detailed every dollar stolen, every bribe paid, and, in sobbing detail, the night of the accident. But her word wasn't enough until she produced the insurance. It wasn't a digital file. It was a physical, handwritten ledger she had kept for 5 years, detailing every instruction Marvin had given her. Handwriting analysis confirmed Marvin's scrawl in the margins. The deep-fake defense crumbled instantly, but the final blow didn't come from the mistress. It came from the victim. Maya Lopez wheeled herself to the stand. She was 23 now, beautiful but scarred. She looked directly at Alexander, who sat at the defense table, pale and hollow. For 5 years, Maya said, her voice soft but filling the room. I thought my paralysis was bad luck. I didn't know the man who did this was living in a mansion 10 miles away, drinking champagne on a yacht bought with money he stole, while my mother worked 3 jobs to pay for my physical therapy. Alexander looked down. For the first time, the arrogance that had defined his life fractured. He wept. Not for himself, but because the monster he had become was finally staring back at him. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Alexander Sterling, guilty on all counts, vehicular manslaughter, obstruction of justice, wire fraud, money laundering, sentenced to 25 years. Marvin Sterling, guilty, conspiracy, racketeering, sentenced to 15 years. Victoria Sterling, though acquitted of criminal charges, the social verdict was a life sentence. She was a pariah, stripped of her status and removed from every board in New York. As the bailiffs moved to handcuff Alexander, he stopped. He looked back at the gallery and found Elise. He didn't look angry. He looked relieved. The secret that had been eating him alive was out. The porcelain fortress had shattered, and he was finally free of the pressure to be perfect. He mouthed one word to her. Sorry. Elise didn't smile. She didn't nod. She simply watched him be led away. The Sterling estate was seized and sold to pay restitution to the shareholders and a massive settlement to Maya Lopez. Elise annulled the marriage on the grounds of fraud and refused a single dime of spousal support. 1 year later, Elise stood on the balcony of her new office in Manhattan. The sign on the glass door read, "The Ross Initiative." It was a legal advocacy group dedicated to uncovering financial abuse in high-net-worth divorces and helping victims silenced by NDAs. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her sister, Tara. "Tara, just saw the news. You got the senator's wife her settlement? You're a hero, Elle." Elise smiled, looking out at the city lights. She wasn't a hero. She was just a woman who had refused to be a victim. She raised a glass of wine to her reflection in the window. "To the brides," she whispered. "May they all be armed." And that is how Elise Ross turned a wedding into a war zone and took down a billionaire dynasty without firing a single shot. Alexander thought he could buy silence, but he forgot that the truth doesn't have a price tag. In the end, Elise didn't just get revenge. She got justice for a girl who had been forgotten, and she built a new legacy from the ashes of the old one. What do you think? Was Elise's public exposure too harsh, or did the Sterlings get exactly what they deserved? And what would you do if you found out your fiancé was hiding a secret that dark? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, revenge, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. I post new drama every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.